Holy shit. The second episode of The Last of Us was blow-away badass in more ways than one, and I can't wait to dive into all of it with you. I'm Dan, aka Wolf, and we will be discussing complete spoilers for episode 2 of the show. But once again, let's keep the comment section free of any major spoilers that happen beyond the events of this episode, whether those spoilers come from the game or the show, so that we can be more welcoming to the television members of our ever-expanding The Last of Us family. In the cold opener, we are given another chilling scene that is not from the game, where a professor of mycology is summoned by the Indonesian government to help stop the spread and to spearhead developing an immunotherapy for those already infected. Much like the scientist in the premiere's opening, this professor reinforces to the audience that there is no cure, and she reaffirms that we're dealing with a no-win scenario. Her only recommendation is an extreme form of triage, bombing their own city. And the actress's performance absolutely sells her fear to us. I overwhelmingly enjoy these new insights into the world and the lore, and I find myself anticipating what new aspects we may become privy to in the episodes to come. Much like when watching the premiere, I spent the majority of the time reacting excitedly to Easter eggs, to shot-by-shot recreations from the game, to the familiar but different, and to the completely fresh and new. The HBO show continues to work so exceedingly well because it is a mishmash of all the above, as a good adaptation should be. A great retelling of any story should offer what is familiar in the original while also adding something completely unique and its own, and The Last of Us Episode 2 continues to pay out with this winning adaptation recipe. Some immediate Easter egg delights for me were, of course, Ellie telling us that she can't swim, Joel clearing some classic The Last of Us debris from a door, observing Joel giving Tess the trademark partner boost, Ellie rocking the typical straggler tourist flashlight, the museum debris collapse, Ellie referencing going into the mall where she was bitten, and I love her micro expressions and how tight-lipped she was about those details, seeing the stalker designs applied to some of the affected, and of course, those super sexy original clicker designs. Like many of us veteran fans, my favorite callback was probably the shot-for-shot "You Can't Deny That View" scene, complete with its original Santalaya music, down to the detail of Joel glancing at his broken watch and that nuanced suggestion of Ellie reminding Joel of Sarah. And as much as I enjoyed how accurate the scene was to its video game counterpart, I remain happy that the majority of the episodes are not spent trying to do this kind of thing. The true payout in this adaptation comes from its unique blending of elements, not in cloning game scenes beat for beat or line by line. I found it interesting that instead of the Goldstone building, we were treated to the much more iconic interior of the flooded hotel from that other city that comes later in the narrative, and what an amazing job they did of recreating it. In fact, all the environments are absolutely stellar and immersive. It continues to be such a treat to see the beautiful and haunting world of The Last of Us translated so expertly into this medium. And I have to say, this episode really sold Bella's iteration of Ellie for me, and holy cow, does she not look like Ashley Johnson? I was already thinking it during the premiere, but the comparison was really unavoidable for me in this episode. The scene with her at the hotel desk was just classic young Ellie silliness from the games, much like what Ellie does at the front desk of a certain museum in a certain birthday flashback, and it totally worked here. I loved her throughout the episode, both in the way she is written and in Bella's performance, from her sense of humor and her more lighthearted moments to selling us unadulterated fear at the museum. And I deeply suspect that our connection with Ellie will continue to deepen as the episodes tick on, much like Joel stealing brief glances at his broken watch. I love that Ellie is our fish out of water that serves as the projection of the audience in terms of learning about this world and its lore with the infected. And before we jump into how amazing the infected were, I just wanted to point out one thing. It may be just a coincidence, but I love how when Joel opens this door, it creaks just like the sound a clicker makes, almost as if foreshadowing what our protagonists are about to encounter. It's probably just some form of audio pareidolia, but I still found it interesting. But holy shit, I am still staggered and absolutely jaw-dropped by the new infected lore that was introduced in this episode. The fact that we learned that the tendrils are actually mycelium and that the infected are connected through this to patches of cordyceps growing all over the place is an incredible idea from Craig Mazin that perfectly builds onto the world that Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann created. Not only does the mycelium connection make perfect sense with what we know about how fungus works, but contextualizing cordyceps cordyceps as a superorganism like ants or a coral reef makes the infected far more terrifying, which is something I didn't think could be possible. Combining this revelation with our first introduction to clickers was absolutely satisfying as a veteran fan, and I am so glad that they kept their original design from the games. In the Inside the Episode bit after the credits, Mason briefly discussed how they kept trying slightly updated looks for the clickers, but they always came back to the original design created by Naughty Dog, and I was so happy to hear that, as it works so well. The scene in the museum was absolutely terrifying, but half of that terror was sold to us by the actors' performances, by the writing choices, and how all of it was shot. Hearing them whisper at first, seeing Joel silently mime that the clickers can't see but they can hear, added so much tension. But the real kicker was the scene with Joel quietly loading his revolver, with the creative decision to have the slow zoom onto his face as tension mounts. Perfection. I also loved Tess from start to finish in this episode, from her "you've got some balls on you sister" line to her seeking redemption for all the bad things she's done as a smuggler and a survivor. Her desperation to get Ellie to the Fireflies is just as palpable, if not more so, than in the game. I love the creative decision to recontextualize Tess's sacrifice with infected instead of Fedra soldiers. Now, while Fedra made sense for the pacing of the video game, changing it to the infected here matched the theme of the episode, and it was just fucking awesome and frightening to watch the mycelium alarm system go to work to summon distant infected to their position in exactly 60 seconds. While I'm not sure how I feel about the tension with the lighter that wouldn't light and the world's first ever mycelium kiss on television, I absolutely loved everything else about what happened here in the Capitol building. And that ending shot with Ellie and the Santalaya music cue was beautiful, somber, and pitch perfect for closing such a stellar chapter. So, with all of that said, what were your favorite parts of this episode? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. What you have to say means more to me than you could possibly know. Well, that's all I have to say for now, friends. Until next time, I will catch you in the wilderness of the mental.
Oh, Christ.
Oops, right?